Saturday, September 3rd, we're getting Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori. Now, there's been a lot of top middleweights in recent memory. All kind of found a round robin of who's who. Everybody looking to get at the champ, Israel Adesanya. Both of these men have fought and lost to Israel Adesanya twice. Never fought each other, but now we're getting at this Saturday. So it's pretty good in the sense that we've seen both of these guys fight a lot of common opponents. Now we get the chance to see them fight each other. It's not like they're old. It's not like they're past their prime by any stretch of the imagination. Both still at the top of their game. Both still doing incredibly well. Both still consistently progressing. Right? That's a key thing right there. Robert Whittaker was the champ, man. He was the champ for a while. He put in a lot of impressive performances. Comes out, loses the belt to Adesanya. Racks off a few more wins, loses the belt to Adesanya again. But he's not discouraged. He's not a guy who's past his prime. He's not a guy who peaked super early in life and then became complacent or took too much damage, or maybe the sport passed him by, you would think, because he just didn't keep up and evolve with her. Whatever the case may be, that's not Robert Whittaker's story. We've seen that from a lot of guys in the past, but that's not what we see from him, and that's awesome. Right? That's great. That means we see a guy who continually is going to be there. Because Robert Whittaker is a fighter, man. It's easy to look at those two losses to Adesanya and write him off. It's easy to look at those two losses and maybe think that he's not quite as good as he is. Not to mention the fact that as MMA fans go, as fight fans go, as a general rule, just as human beings typically are, we don't have the greatest attention span. We don't have the greatest amount of patience. We're always looking for the next new big thing. We're always looking for what's going to happen next, what's going to set us on fire, what's going to be the next big guy. So when we look at Robert Whittaker, former champ, lost 2 times, easy to overlook him. But man, that would be a mistake. That would be a big mistake. Robert Whittaker is not a man to overlook. Robert Whittaker is a true MMA martial fighter, right? I was going to say true MMA martial artist, but that's kind of in the word, right? So he's a true mixed martial artist. Okay, and what I mean by that is the man's got incredible versatility. Have we seen him land really good punches and understand distance and use the jab and the right hand and land the hook off of angles and turns, things that we would typically associate with boxing? Yeah, we've seen that. Have we seen him land really good low kicks? Have we seen him bounce around on the outside at a kicking range and be able to get stuff done? Have we seen him use a 1-2 high kick combination to take guys out? Yeah, we've seen that too, right? Stuff that we would associate more with Muay Thai or kickboxing. Have we ever seen him get a submission victory? Have we ever seen him do good grappling? Have we ever seen him do good inside the clinch and that really close range? Things that we would associate with jiu-jitsu or grappling or wrestling, stuff like that. Yeah, we've seen that too, right? So when we talk about Robert Whittaker, we're talking about a man who's incredibly well-rounded. We've seen him do it all. Oh, by the way, one thing I didn't even mention that has to be mentioned, takedown defense. Pretty good takedown defense. Nobody thinks of Robert Whittaker as a wrestler, right? That's not the first thing that comes to our mind. But you're not going to be the champ. You're not going to go up against all those guys on your way to the belt, defend the belt multiple times, if you can't handle yourself adequately in the wrestling department, right? That's just the way it is. Good all around, right? Now, the way that he shines, what I particularly like about him, what stands out about his game, is his ability to control the gap. Right? That gap between him and his opponent, it's so crucial. If you can't control that gap, you are always at the mercy of the other man. If you're not good at controlling that gap, that means he dictates where the fight takes place. Is it going to be in close? Is it going to be far? What if you're only good in tight, but he's better at controlling the distance and he keeps you on the outside with something as basic as a jab and footwork? It'll be a long night for you, right? You have to be able to control the distance when it comes to the stand-up game. Robert Whittaker is a master at controlling the distance. Consequently, he's not quite as good as Israel Adesanya, which is why we saw a big part of the reason we saw so much trouble there. Adesanya is just an absolute wizard at controlling that gap, right? He fights when he wants to fight, get in, get out, all those types of things. Robert Whittaker typically has that advantage against his opponents. He didn't against Adesanya. Part of the reason we saw him come up on an 0-2 against him, okay? Because he compensated by lunging in and this and that. Okay, I don't think that's going to be the case against Vettori, but that's what really stands out about him, is his ability to control the gap. And kind of what coincides with that is his explosiveness. He's very light on his feet. He's got great lateral movement. He moves around really well, right? In a way that you typically don't see from bigger guys, in a way that you typically don't see from guys in his weight division. So his opponents aren't quite used to it. They probably, when they're in sparring, they probably got to bring in lighter guys at, 170 or 155. They're going to be able to move the same way that he does, right? He's just got that ability. Compare him to the guy who's standing across from him, Marvin Vettori. Much more flat-footed. Much more heavy on the lead foot. Much more has to come forward and be aggressive. You think Marvin Vettori is going to win fights off the back foot? You think Marvin Vettori is going to win fights being relatively stationary, trying to catch and counter and move forward in a slow and measured pace. Think he's got great lateral movement or anything. All this stuff that we see from the champ is Adesanya. All this stuff that we see from Robert Whittaker, right? These are things that make him stand out amongst his peers. Okay? Now, standing across from him, we've got Marvin Vettori. Now, Marvin Vettori is a guy that we've seen him progress, man. It's one of the things I really liked about him. He hooked up with Rafael Cordeiro, and we've seen his striking progress. He came in, he was much more plodding, much more heavy on the front foot than he needed to be. Much more of his game was built on aggression and getting to the clinch and being able to do things and overpower guys and kind of be a bully in that regard, right? Very strong, underrated strength probably. Although I don't know at this point. He's been around, he's done so many things. Maybe it's not underrated anymore, but it's still impressive. But you're not going to get all the way to where you need to be just doing that. You're not going to get all the way to the title belt or win the belt and be dominant and defend the belt and all these things if you've got glaring weaknesses. So we knew he had to work on his striking game, and we saw him over there with a master of striking, Rafael Cordeiro. And we've seen his game consistently increase, right? We've seen him consistently get better. Think about this last fight that we saw with Costa, okay? Take out all the antics and the fact that it's Costa and the fact that this happened at 205 and all of that kind of stuff. Let's just look at what Vettori brought to the table. From a striking perspective, striking was a lot better, right? It continually progresses. He started out just doing good with the left hand. Started out being able to lead with it, counter with it. He was able to use it in tight spots. He was able to get off with it a little bit of distance. He was able to use it in a 1-2. He was able just to do things, right? It's ways that you see him progress as a striker. But now that we saw him in this last fight with Costa, he got off much better with combinations, used the right hook a little bit better, understood distance and control a little bit better, right? Just continually progressing as a striker. Now he's focusing a lot on the boxing. He doesn't really have great kicks. As a matter of fact, I think he's still a little bit too heavy on that front leg, which leaves him open to kicks. Something that I expect Robert Whittaker to use, right? Goes out there, he's good. He'll attack the knee, he'll attack inside, he'll attack outside, he uses calf kicks. Robert Whittaker isn't known as, some Wonder Boy Thompson karate expert. He's not coming out there with phenomenal kicks, but he's good with them. He hides them well. He knows how to use them at the right time, hides the high kick, uses the low kick at distance, but doesn't necessarily set himself up for counters, right? He's good with all of those things. That's going to work well against Vettori. Because Vettori is going to want to get inside. He's going to want to be aggressive. He's going to want to work those boxing combinations as much as he can. He's going to want to get into the clinch. He's going to want to try to rough Robert Whittaker up. If he can get some takedowns, believe me, he's definitely going to want that. He's going to want to be in top position to be heavy and land some ground and pound. But the question is whether or not he's going to be able to do all that. And I don't think that he is, right? Because at the end of the day, Robert Whittaker's got a great jab. He knows how to use it. He can step inside or outside of that lead hand of Vettori when he wants to land it. Okay, the way that he's going to come inside or outside of that lead foot even against the southpaw. Okay, he's got a great right hand. He's got great lateral movement. I don't think he's going to be able to be trapped well. Marvin Vettori isn't a master of cutting the ring off. Sometimes he can follow you a little bit. We've seen that in the fight with Adesanya. Right? Think about what Adesanya did with him. The way he was able to pick him apart and move from the outside. In a way, it's going to be similar with Robert Whittaker. He's not quite as long, obviously, and he doesn't fight as much from the outside, doesn't use kicks quite as much. But in a way, that's what we're going to see. We're going to see Robert Whittaker on the outside using lateral movement, controlling the flow, controlling the action, landing his shots when he wants to, getting off, landing some big shots here and there when Vettori tries to get too aggressive. Perfectly honest, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Robert Whittaker get a takedown. Right? Think about if we saw Whittaker go up 2 rounds to zip off of clean, effective striking, controlling with the jab, landing the right hand, maybe a hook every now and then, some good kicks. Vettori starts to get frustrated, right? Rafael Cordeiro's in the corner telling him he needs to get after it, telling him he needs to go faster, telling him he needs to be more aggressive. That sounds like a perfect opportunity for Robert Whittaker to come in and counter that with a takedown, right? Ring IQ is very high. He's going to be able to go in there and get it done. So I even like the odds on this one. I think he's like minus 245, which translates to approximately a 71% predicted or winning percentage. Right? I think when you plug that in and you look at it, there's value to be had in that line on Robert Whittaker. So I'm going Robert Whittaker on this one. I think the former champ racks up another win. Let me know what you guys think. Is this a situation where I may be giving him a little bit too much credit? Am I not valuing what Vettori brings to the table? Is he going to look even better after coming out with that victory over Costa? Let me know what you guys think.